Welcome to a bonus podcast episode of our Ridgecrest podcast. I'm here today. By the way, I'm the world's okayest pastor, which has been evident by the fact that we've tried this 3 or 4 times now and it's failed miserably. But we're here now.
They didn't know that until you said it, though, because we cut all of that out.
I'm good with that, though. I try to be transparent. I try to live my life in front of other people. I'm Michael Estes. I'm the senior pastor here. This is Logan Ellzey.
Speaking of transparent, we're about to
get real.
Yeah, clear as glass.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
Straight through, straight to the heart.
Yep. Okay. So, tell me what you do here.
I'm coming back to the heart.
Going back to that worship music. Yeah, baby.
Yep. I'm the student pastor, not the worship pastor. I take care of middle school and high school. Sometimes when they leave school, and anything in between.
Yep. You do a lot.
Well,
in that regard.
A little bit.
All right. So you know my family pretty well.
Yep.
Do you know who gave me this mug?
Your sister.
She did, yes. Because she thought it would be funny to be sarcastic and snarky because that's her love language with one another. And so I'm impressed that you knew that. I'm guessing we had that conversation before.
It's a vault. Once it goes in, it stays in.
See, that's y'all. Logan's, like I said, he's good at what he does. And so, all right. So you know the rest of my family. You actually ministered to 2 of them, and you're about to get the 3rd one.
Yep. I would even say I ministered to your father-in-law too, but he may disagree with that.
Probably so. So what we're doing here is we're just trying to get to know staff better. We're trying to share with our people some of our thoughts about ministry and our vision for living and following Jesus. And so I think the first step in that process is understanding how you came to follow Jesus for the first time. So, tell us a little bit about your story.
That's a very important thing.
It is.
It's almost the foundation, the cornerstone, you might say.
Yeah.
How I came to know the Lord. One, I grew up here, Madison, Mississippi, born and raised. Not too many people are born and raised in Madison. Either they're born here and they move away, or they move here at some point. I was actually born here. So grew up here, went all the way through school here, went to Mississippi College, which is local, so I'm about as local as it gets. Grew up going to church, sometimes, whenever. It was just kind of like culturally when I felt like it, we went. But didn't really mean anything until in 9th grade. So how old are you in 9th grade? 14?
14, I think.
In 9th grade, I had one of my best friends actually invite me to church, and unbeknownst to me, he had just gotten saved like the summer beforehand. Mm-hmm. And so we're starting 9th grade. He says, hey, I've started going to this church. I think it would be great for you to come and hang out. We have these life groups on Sunday morning. It's like Sunday school. I was like, great. And so we show up, and it was a life group, pretty large. We were separated by just our grade. It was a co-ed thing, and you walk in, and there were these like 5 or 6 families who taught it. So you had a bunch of adults in there, and I was like, okay, I know these people. I know these adults. We're getting into it. Mm-hmm. And we sit down, and this lady she starts to teach, and she's talking about how there's heaven, and what is going to happen after we die. And I was like, great. I have questions. I've never really even thought about this. What is that going to be like? And she said that we are all going to be brides of Christ. And I was like, hold on.
Hit the brakes.
Where about like the grooms of Christ or something like that? And I also don't want to marry a dude to begin with.
Right.
And she just ignored me, or I didn't say anything. I can't remember. And then she started talking about how as the bride of Christ and we're in heaven, we will all be wearing wedding dresses that will be beautiful and white and pure. And I was just like, this is making me very uncomfortable. I'm not okay with this. Who knew that Christians were cross-dressers, or they hoped to be at one point? Mm-hmm. And then she put on this like Hanes undershirt, like a men's undershirt. She put it on over her whatever she was wearing. And she was talking about how pure and white, when you don't sin and when you follow Jesus, your dress is perfectly pure. And then she pulls out this big honking chef knife, like this kitchen knife, and she goes, and when you sin, she grabs her shirt, you ruin your wedding dress over and over and over again. And the more you sin, you'll ruin your dress. And it looks like she's stabbing herself, and she's freaking out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady is nuts. And then she starts crying, and her makeup's running, and she's like, I just want you all to know this more. It's very important. She starts crying, and she's like, you just have to know this. And I looked at my friend, and I said, what the crap did you bring me to? I'm never coming back to this.
I can't believe you ever came back to church.
He begged me for like the next 3 days to just try it again. He said, Logan, there's all these other teachers. That lady is just the one insano person. But we came back and she taught again, and that was just like the holy.
Maybe just a one-off.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. It didn't always happen.
Okay.
But then the next week I came, and a guy named Bob Bunting, who is incredible, shared this just very, like, if you were thinking about baseball, it was not a home run, it wasn't a triple, it was just like a solid single or a double lesson. He talked about how we have a hole in our soul that nothing can fill but Jesus, and how we try to fill that with all kinds of things, but it's only Jesus that fills it. And I was like, this is something I could get behind. And so it started this process over the next year of me just going to church and asking questions and being ministered to and discipled and having these families speak into me and really falling in love with church and Jesus, to the point to where in 10th grade at a D now, I had this experience happen where I felt this peace of God come over me, and it was almost like someone was speaking to me saying, like, I'm here to give you a purpose. I'm here to give you peace. Like, I have a plan for you, which for me was huge because I had just been kind of wandering, floating through life as a 10th grader, wondering, like, is this really all there is? And then that moment of a D now, I don't even remember who the speaker was or what was happening, but just felt like the Holy Spirit was working in me, saying, like, there is a place for you here. And then gave my life to Christ, and then spent the next 2 years trying to really figure out what that looks like when I graduated, and then went to college. Thought I was going to do a lot of different things. Almost failed out of college my freshman semester. Thought I was going to go into business. Got fired from one of the businesses I was working at, and then slowly found my way to ministry. Felt that call to ministry, and then here we are after a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So actually, my second question has to do with your call to ministry. But before we get there, were there any like immediate changes that took place in your life after you started to follow Jesus? Like, what were some things that like immediately you picked up on? Like, hey, this is different about me now.
Yeah, hardly any at first.
Okay.
So I was not one who like shot off like a rocket.
Yeah.
I was very much like had a mountaintop experience on Saturday. Went to church Sunday, went back to school on Monday, and was like, oh, this is like something I've got to do.
Gotcha.
The way of my life and the people around me and the way that I lived my life very much was a struggle. And I fell back into old things. If it wasn't for that friend of mine who kind of walked with me through this, and then the community that I had built, then it would have been very much like flash in the pan, go away. But it took me probably a year, 6 months to a year to really start to get traction and really figure out, like, oh, this isn't like some magical thing where like now I'm a new person. Like, it's something that I have to work at. Like, sanctification is something that is every day you fighting the fight, doing the work, and just walking with endurance.
Yeah.
And so the difference is after that point, I started to see differences in how I interacted with people, differences in how I handled my emotions, and really just like empathy went way up. I was thinking about others and not just myself, which is hard to imagine a high school student not just thinking about themselves. But God just started to do works in me like that. Sins that had been a stronghold over my life started to fall away in that time. I started to see God just do incredible things, either on a mission trip or just in day-to-day life, where you see prayers answered and miracles happen. And, slowly but surely we grow and get out of that.
Do you think, so like I think a lot of people freak out when it's not that immediate, like, I'm a totally different person now. I mean, do you think your experience is the exception or the rule?
I think it's probably more the rule.
Yeah.
I think for some people, there's something crazy that happens, either at the point of salvation an addiction is broken, or there's a healing that takes place, or there's clarity of mind that happens. And when those kind of things happen, or their salvation is part of God delivering them out of something, I think a lot of times that happens immediately. Especially with teenagers, especially with people who grow up in a church culture, it's much more slow.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, your life isn't that crazy that you need to be delivered out of. But also, I think a lot of times we get, and this is more for us as pastors and leaders and teachers, a lot of times we tend to over-emotionalize things.
Yeah, I agree.
to where we get people so riled up and they make this decision and they're so heightened emotionally that they think that, oh, life is going to be so different and my life's going to be crazy and like I'm willing to do anything. And then you wake up the next day and you realize, like, whereas you still feel that way, the life that you live is still very much the same. And now begins the work of you transforming the life around you to be more like Christ.
Yeah.
And God doesn't just change everything. He still meets you where you are, but you still are where you are.
Yeah.
And it's your job with God to walk and work out of that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I
That's
think
good. I agree with you. I think part of what frightens people when they become believers is that there isn't like necessarily this instantaneous everything is different about me. So there's this questioning of did anything happen?
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of that's attached to that emotional part of it where it's like I had emotional experience maybe or something along those lines and the emotions haven't carried me through to instantaneous change. And I believe that I'm a big believer that discipleship is a long road of hard work. And it's not that we're working to save ourselves, but we are working to see this life kind of come to be our experience as opposed to just what we think about.
Right.
So, all right. So back to your story. So how did you end up in ministry? Because you said that there were some circumstances that kind of led you in that direction, but like, can you go into a little bit more detail there?
Oh, of course. I love these stories. So as I was moving into senior year at Madison Central, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Thought, doctor would be fun. My family is very much involved with healthcare and hospitals due to illness, but also vocation. And so I was very comfortable with hospitals. I thought, hey, if we're going to do it, let's go to the top. Let's be a doctor. So try to figure out where to go, what to do, like most seniors. Also, I'm a large individual who played football, and so recruiting for college football was on the table. I just got burned out, did not want to do that.
Yeah.
So that was a whole nother story. Long story short, ended up at Mississippi College because Mississippi College, arguably, but not really arguably, has the best pre-med program in the state. So I was like, hey, I'll go here. This is where a lot of my friends were going. I was able to meet new people. It just really worked out. That's where I was supposed to go. So I go in freshman semester, going to do pre-med, which is either biology or chemistry. I did biology. Didn't matter, though, because freshman year, you take biology, chemistry, both in the same semester, both with labs.
Yeah.
So it's like 8 credit hours of science.
Yep.
Turns out I'm not good at that. Also turns out that they give you like the roughest time in your freshman semester to just weed out people.
Yeah.
And I was definitely a weed because I was failing both of those, failing 8 hours worth of classes. So I go to my advisor and say, look, this isn't working out. And she said, well, you're kind of stuck because if you drop these classes, you're no longer a full-time student. You lose your scholarship, not good things.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what are we going to do? Because this is not okay. And she said, if you can just pass, if you can just make a D in any of these classes or in all of these classes, then you'll be done with your science requirements for college, and then you can go on with your merry way. And it was the grace of God and my biology professor that I came out of that with a D. So ended freshman semester, first semester, not even the full year, the first semester with a 1.97 GPA, academic probation. I was feeling good at that point. And so I said, okay, pre-med is not for me. Maybe business is for me. My dad is a CPA. I just thought that may work. So I went to get a general business administration degree. I liked to ride bikes at the time. And so I got a job at a bicycle shop in town and said, this will be great. I'll learn how to do this. I'll eventually open up my own retail spot. This is what I want to do. After about 3 months, I got fired from that job. Because it turns out I was a bicycle mechanic, and to be a bicycle mechanic, you need to actually know how to fix bikes.
Yeah.
And I just walked in and said, hey, just train me and I'll show up. And turns out they didn't want that. They wanted someone who knew
could
it.
actually do that.
Yeah, it was exciting. I met my replacement the day that I got let go.
Oh, nice.
It was great. So at this point, we're in sophomore year. I'm trying to figure out what to do. And my youth pastor calls, or actually a friend says, hey, the church that you go to is hiring interns. I was like, I didn't know we had interns. So I called my youth pastor and said, hey, can I be an intern with you? And he said, absolutely. I spent the summer interning with the student ministry at my home church. Loved every second of it. After that, during the school year of sophomore year, moved into children's ministry, where I spent the next 2 years doing children's ministry. And for the rest of college, in the summer and during the school, I just interned with my church.
Yeah.
And got to see ministers, got to meet all kinds of different people, and got to really experience what it means to be a minister and a pastor, and fell in love with it. And I felt like God saying, like, this is what you're meant to do. And so I went to go ask a couple of pastors, mentors of mine, and all of them said the same thing. It's like, they said, if you can do anything else, do that, because ministry is hard, and you can always work a job and do ministry. But to do full-time ministry, if you can do anything else, do it. And I was like, well, I failed out of pre-med. I just got fired from trying to work somewhere else. Let's just see what happens with this. And that calling just grew and grew and grew. And then went to seminary afterwards while I was working full-time as a student pastor after I graduated college. And that's where God just kind of cemented it of like, you are meant to teach, you are meant to lead and disciple. This is why you were put here.
Yeah.
And so I'm still doing it.
Okay. It's a great story. It's one of those, I think that if you were to talk to a lot of people that have ended up in ministry, it's probably a story that a lot of them would tell, is they tried other things and those things just did not work out circumstantially for lots of different reasons. And like, sometimes it's not that I struggled at this, or like I just couldn't find a position, and then all of a sudden, like, the Lord keeps presenting opportunities in the church. And so, yeah, I think that's probably experience of a lot of people. Okay, so this next question then is going to be maybe a little bit harder to answer, but like, what would you do if you weren't in ministry? If you could do anything else, because like I asked Matt Cloyd, our executive pastor, same question. Pilot was his answer because he loves flying. But like, I'm just curious, like, because it kind of tells us a little bit about some of the things that you're passionate about, maybe outside of.
Oh, okay. So
ministry.
this is
So,
that kind. Because if it was like, if you got fired from Ridgecrest, where
Not
would
that
you go?
question.
That would be like cut grass, maybe. I would probably either work at some kind of a nonprofit, or be an author and write and teach, or own some kind of business, like a landscaping business or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I love to read and to write and to teach, and I also love to lead and serve people. And so service-based jobs and ministries really appeal to me. And I don't know, I've just always cut grass, and I'm kind of good at it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but as far as like actual jobs, like if this doesn't work out, there really is no backup plan. I only have a business administration degree, so that doesn't really get you much places.
I have the same issue. I have 2 history degrees besides my MDiv, which means that I can either teach or do what I do, or nothing else. Maybe be a librarian.
Yeah, that MDiv does nothing for you outside of ministry.
Absolutely not. So,
Which is crazy. If you don't know this, an MBA is like 36 credit hours. You know how much a standard MDiv is? It's like 86 credit hours.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
So,
Why are we working twice as hard when you work 30
for a
hours?
degree that gets you one job.
In an MBA, you don't have to learn any languages. We had to learn 2 dead languages.
Yep.
That I immediately forgot upon finishing the
That's
semester.
what the internet's for.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. So last year's been crazy.
Yep.
Like really, really crazy. You experienced it in a lot of different ways, because you experienced it as a person with a young child. You experienced it as a student pastor, and trying to plan and then having to cancel a bunch of events. So how has the last year changed your perspective on ministry?
Ooh. I found out that I don't do well working from home.
Okay.
At least with a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Maybe when Cash is older and kids are older, that will be different. I found out that a lot of your events, if you're not careful, are fluff and not essential, and they're just there to either fill up a calendar or to just to be busy. Mm-hmm. And I found that out when you cancel every single one of your events in a calendar year and you still survive ministry, that, hey, some of these things that we were doing may not have been really essential or fruitful or helpful. Mm-hmm. I also realized that, especially with students and families, so maybe not, I'll just say just with students and families, if we are not making sure that they have a thriving personal relationship with Jesus, if they are not at least trying to follow him by themselves, they will drown and struggle and suffer when the church is unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, the church was never unavailable, whatever. Last year, for a period of time where we could not meet in person, the church, as a lot of people see it, was unavailable. Yeah. And people had to rely on their personal relationship with Jesus, the spiritual disciplines, the spiritual formations of what does it look like to follow Jesus day to day, week to week, month to month. And I found out that at least with our families and students, many of us did not have any of that. We had no discipline, no formations. We had no idea of what it looks like when you take away Wednesday night and Sunday church. We had no idea what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus without that. And so I had a lot of students who were calling me saying, like, I haven't read my Bible in 6 months.
Yeah.
Ever since church started, I just stopped reading it, and like I feel lost. And I would be like, how's your prayer life? Are you doing any kind of are you fasting? Are you doing anything to just really hold on to your relationship with Jesus? And a lot of students and their parents had just said, no, we're just kind of existing right now. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that what we need to be doing as ministers and as leaders of the church is provide experiences and opportunities that further their relationship with God, but also we have to be preparing them and equipping them to be followers of Christ and know how to do that on their own. Yeah. Because we won't always be here. Either they're going to move away or we have a giant pandemic where we can't meet twice a week.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I think one of the things that you said that kind of stuck out to me is so much of our mindset has for so long been the church is a place where we go. And like one of the things that became clear to me is that we have to do a better job of teaching and then living out the fact that the church is a people that we are united to. And so we have this community of faith that we can be with. Even if we can't come to a building, we can find ways to be together so that we don't have those periods of our life where we're completely disconnected from everybody else. And because we're disconnected from everybody else, our spiritual life starts to wither, especially when you're young. Because I know that was the case with me. Part of the reason I grew at all as a young person in high school and college is because, and I didn't grow very much in college for this reason, but in high school I had a community of believing people that encircled my life and basically led me toward Jesus and taught me to do things like read my Bible and pray and worship and those sorts of things.
And the students who didn't just survive COVID or 2020, but really thrived and grew during that time were people who we met with, or people who had mentors and life group leaders that they went to and that were able to talk and really open up and be themselves and be vulnerable with. Yep. They did well, because when corporate events couldn't happen, they had the individual interpersonal relationships that really helped them thrive. But even past that, we've got to figure out more about what it means to have the spiritual formations and actually build this life around following Jesus that does not just where I go twice a week.
Yeah. So, okay, you and I have talked a lot about spiritual disciplines, spiritual formations. We're reading a book together right now about some of that stuff and understanding those things better. So this is not one of the questions that I have for everybody. This is a question that's unique to you. What is Jesus teaching you right now? What are you learning about? And this is maybe something new or a new perspective on something that you already knew.
What to say? Right now, I'm really walking through openness and honesty in my prayer life and in my communication with God, not just assuming that my life is my relationship with Him is great. I'm actually reading through Lamentations, which is a very interesting book to read through.
Just finished it myself. Yeah.
Where Jeremiah is on one side just really upset and angry and hurt by the Lord about when God is causing things to happen. God is not just allowing negative circumstances to happen to him, but God is causing pain and anguish to happen to him. And then in chapter 3, he'll just flip it halfway through the chapter and say, "Great is your faithfulness, your mercies are new every morning." And I'm walking through how we can be that honest with God, and how we can be okay with the present time of being like, God, I'm not okay with you right now. Like, here's some things that I'm really struggling with. Like, let's talk through these things, and not from a sense of like my salvation is in question or struggling. I think sometimes that's immediately where we go, is like, I'll be honest with him if like I'm struggling with salvation, but even like, hey, I don't really agree with the way that your plan is shaping out right now. I don't really agree with what is happening, but still you are good, but still you are faithful. And so spiritual discipline and formation wise, that's a lot of prayer. That's a lot of solitude and just listening to God, of like just sitting and journaling and trying to walk through like God, what am I actually feeling? Like, what am I actually trying to get over to you? And not just saying like, God, you're great. God, we love you. Amazing. Can I have a new car? Can I have a pony? But like really trying to figure out like, what am I feeling? What are the emotions that are running through my head? And what does that mean with our relationship? And what does that look like? And is there a part of that I'm really not okay with? And let's talk through that. And through that negative thing, like Jeremiah, how can I still lean on your goodness and the grace that you give me and the mercy that is new every morning?
Yeah.
So
That's good.
that's kind of what I'm walking through, is trying to be more open with God and trying to deepen that relationship through listening and trying to just be more emotionally healthy, to be honest.
Yeah. I think a lot of people over the past year have had to either learn how to do that or have realized that that's an issue for them as far as their emotional health goes and stuff like that. So,
and it may have been a book we read, I don't know, but it was talking about how, especially in the South, we put so much emphasis on kindness and niceness that we butcher ourselves in the emotional health category. We never allow ourselves to feel any of what we call negative emotions, like pain, sadness, anger, hurt. And that really does a number on us, especially in our relationship with God, because we never let ourselves be honest and experience these things, not even with our family, our friends, but definitely not with God, because we feel like we have to be nice to God. We have to always be grateful and for all the stuff he's given us. And all throughout the Bible, there are times where people are very ticked off. They are very hurt and very upset, and they're calling out to God saying like, why are you doing this to me? And I feel like, at least in our personal context, we really are not good at opening that up and sharing that with God or with anybody. But I think with God is a great place to start.
Yep. And once you start to do it with God, what you'll figure out is there are people that you can find that you can trust to do that with as well. And I think that's pretty much everything that I see in the New Testament is a teaching where we're reconnected to God, we're reconciled to Him, and when we are reconciled to Him, we're reconciled to others. And so there's that kind of circle of living that happens out of that. All right, so some difficult things, but like I'm curious to know what's been your best moment in ministry, what maybe or time period of ministry, what's been that best time, and why was it so good?
So the best, whenever I feel the best about ministry is when I get done teaching, whether I'm on stage or in a Bible study. Usually it's when I'm more preaching instead of just like small group Bible study. I like both, but those are the moments where I get off the stage or I end the talk and I just feel like God is telling me like, this is why you're on this earth. You are here to teach. You are here to preach. Like, you taking information and delivering it to others in a compassionate and persuasive way is like why I'm here. I love it. The best time period of ministry is probably just the time period we're in. I mean, I'm at a place where Ridgecrest students is going nuts. Like, we're not growing astronomically, but that's not always necessarily the way to go about it. I'm seeing life change happen in students almost on a weekly basis. Yeah. It's one of those, and you've been in ministry long enough. It's a time where you're seeing fruit. There's visible fruit that's happening that God is allowing you to see and know about. It's just incredible when you can, like, at the end of a Sunday or Wednesday or whenever, you can like sit down and say like, oh, I see this kid growing, or like I see this family growing closer together, or I see our ministry growing in either numerically or spiritually for some reason. And I think it's great. God is allowing me to witness fruit from this ministry as we're having it. Instead of it being like, one of your former students calling you 20 years later and saying like, hey, you really meant a lot to me. Like, I'm able to see students in their fruit come about as it's happening. So good things are happening. We're blowing and going. We have families that are really deeply committed and involved to our ministry. We have students who want to be here. And we have people that are outside of that want to be involved too. Yeah. And so it's going pretty well right now.
That's good.
I'm pretty excited about it.
I know my kids, my two that are involved, and my other one who's going to be involved really soon, all look forward to every event they can be at, everything that you do. And so,
well, I like one of your kids.
Leave that out.
We'll let them figure out who the other two are.
I like it. And they will debate it.
Lorelai will just be like, "It's me. It's obvious. It's me."
Yep.
She will. Jackson may think in his head like, "Could it be me or could it be someone else?" Lorelai will be 100% like, "It's me. It's 100%."
And then Micah will think it's not him, but then try to fight for that affection in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of the way it's going to play out here, I think. All right, last question.
Ready?
This is a big question. So, what do you want people to say about you when you retire from ministry?
Man, he's old.
So you want to do this for a long time.
When one of my seminary classes, a lot of them said this, but one in particular said, look around the room. There was probably 30 of us in there. He said 1 out of 10 ministers will retire as ministers. Mm-hmm. And he's like, 9 out of every 10 of you will not retire in ministry. You will quit. You will leave. You will be fired from. For whatever reason, you will not retire as a minister.
So just to make sure that's clear, he's in a room of 30. That means 3 people are going to actually finish in ministry.
Which is insane.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, out of the guys that I knew out of that room, I know 5 already who are no longer in ministry. Yeah. Which is crazy.
How long ago?
I graduated from seminary in 2018.
Okay.
So that was 2018. So that was 3 years ago.
3 years, yeah.
So I've had 5 who have already left in 3 years. Mm-hmm. I think I've experienced burnout myself. I've experienced I've driven home from church wondering, how can I do this for the next 40 years, 50 years? And so my goal in ministry, besides to do incredible things for the Lord and his kingdom, is to do that until I'm 70, is to be in ministry. My goal is to retire in ministry. I want people to say like, wow, he taught me and my kids, or I was able to be there for generations as they come through. I want to be like an old preacher boy. Yep. And so, because I think so often we come so hot out the gates and we try to do these crazy and amazing things when we're 25, and then by 30, we're so burned out. We hate the church. We hate the people in the church, and we just want nothing more to do with it. And we go do brick masonry.
Which is fun, but it's.
But if you rewind 20 minutes ago, where I'm talking about how like this is literally why I was put on this earth, me doing brick masonry or me doing grass cutting or me doing other stuff, it's not why I'm here.
Right.
And so I want people to just want to retire, and I want people to like say like, oh, he did what he wanted to do. He was able to be a minister of the kingdom for as long as he could. Yeah,
it's good stuff. All right. Well, I feel like we've gotten to know you a lot better.
We jammed today.
Yeah, we did. This may be the best bonus episode.
Hey, and there's only been 2.
There's only been 2 so far.
So,
by the way, when you watch this, I don't know what order these are going to come out in. So he may come out first, and we'll say this is the second one. We're not recording these in order, any specific order. So if you guys have more questions about student ministry or what Logan does, or if you want to be involved in student ministry, I know he would love volunteers.
Absolutely.
And so reach out to him. You can email Jenna, his assistant, or you can email Logan directly. You probably maybe more success with Jenna.
Always
okay.
Contact Jenna, not me.
Logan and I share this trait that we hear something and we probably forget it 5 seconds later if we're not really locked in. And so, it's helpful for us to, if you tell more than one person that you're interested in something that we're doing. But yeah, reach out to him and get involved in student ministry. There are lots of different ways that you can serve. Guys, you don't have to teach. You can just be a person that somebody can talk to. You can disciple a young person. And that doesn't look like I think Logan would tell you this is to doesn't look like you have all the answers all the time. It's I'm going to walk with you through life, and we're going to pray together, and I'm going to share Jesus with you when I can, and that's really what discipleship should look like in student ministry in a lot of ways. And so, anyways, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to Jenna.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I graduated seminary in 2018. What year did you graduate seminary?
2009.
Look at you. I was in 9th grade.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I'm old. I'm moving in that direction quickly.
I just like to let people know.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Logan. I really appreciate it. And now I feel like probably I am the world's okayest pastor, and I'm also starting to turn gray in places like all over here and here. It's
2020 was something.
It was, yeah. It was interesting.
It was something else.
So, but anyways, we are so glad that you joined us for this, and we hope that it was helpful and informative. And thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you soon.